Ladies and gentlemen, daughters of destiny, hear me today. When God sets his eyes on a woman, when heaven has written her name in the book of influence, when eternity has assigned her to carry something too heavy for ordinary hands, God does not start with the crown. He starts with the crushing. This is the mystery of divine preparation. The breaking is not rejection. The breaking is not punishment. The breaking is the shaping of a vessel strong enough to carry glory without leaking. When God chooses a woman, one of the first things he does is heal the wounds she has carried in silence. Many of these wounds are not visible to the world. They are not always physical scars. They are the invisible bruises of the heart. They are the echoes of rejection, the weight of betrayal, the ache of disappointment, and the quiet voice that tells her she is not enough. These wounds may have been buried so deep that she has learned to live with them, even build around them. But God, in his love, will not allow her to carry those wounds into the destiny he has ordained for her. He knows that what is hidden will eventually leak into her future, so he brings her through the breaking, not to destroy her, but to expose and heal the places no one else can touch. This healing is not always gentle. Sometimes it feels like everything familiar is being stripped away. Sometimes it feels like the very ground beneath her feet is shaking, but in reality, God is pulling out the roots of pain that have grown too long in her soul. He is confronting the lies she has believed about herself, lies planted by others or by her own past. When a woman has been broken by rejection, she may secretly believe she is unworthy of love. When she has been abandoned, she may think she is destined to be alone. When she has been hurt, she may guard her heart so tightly that she does not allow herself to trust again. Yet God says, "No, I cannot let you lead with this wound unhealed. I cannot let you pour into others from a vessel cracked by pain. I must break you open so I can heal you whole." And here is the beauty of it. The very wound that once disqualified her becomes the very well of authority God uses through her. When she is healed, her testimony carries weight. When she speaks to others who are hurting, her words are not empty encouragement. They carry the oil of experience. A woman who has walked through brokenness and allowed God to heal her is dangerous to the enemy because she cannot be silenced by shame anymore. She knows who she is, and she knows the one who restored her. Take, for example, the story of a woman who had grown up always feeling second best. Her father left when she was young, and though she was loved by her mother, she carried the silent wound of abandonment. Throughout her life, she worked twice as hard to prove her worth, excelling in school, career, even ministry, but deep inside, the wound of not being chosen still whispered in her heart. One day, when the breaking season came, everything she had built started to collapse. Her relationship failed, her plans fell apart, and she felt stripped of every achievement. In that season of emptiness, she finally heard the voice of God say, "I chose you before the foundation of the world. I have never abandoned you. I am your Father, and I am with you." That truth did what no applause, no success, and no relationship could ever do. It healed her. From that moment, she no longer lived for the approval of others. She no longer feared rejection because she knew she was already accepted. And when she spoke to other women who had faced abandonment, her words carried fire and authority. The wound that once held her hostage became the very testimony that set others free. So the breaking is not punishment. It is surgery. It is God's way of healing what she did not even realize was broken. And once healed, she rises not only whole for herself, but as a vessel of healing for others. When God chooses a woman, one of the first things he does is bring her strength into surrender. Every chosen woman has natural gifts, talents, and abilities that set her apart. She may be intelligent, resilient, creative, or a leader by nature. These qualities are not accidents. They are part of how God has formed her. But if she leans only on what she can do in her own power, she will eventually discover the limits of human strength. Her talents may open doors, but they cannot sustain the weight of divine assignment. Her determination may take her far, but it cannot carry her through the valleys of destiny. That is why when God places his hand on a woman, he humbles her strength, not to weaken her, but to shift her dependence from herself to him. This process often comes through seasons that feel like contradictions. A strong woman, capable in many areas, suddenly finds herself in situations where her skill does not solve the problem. The very areas she once trusted become places of frustration. She may feel as if she is failing, but in reality, God is teaching her a higher strength. He allows her to come to the end of herself so she will discover that His power works best in her weakness. The breaking humbles her, reminding her that her destiny cannot be accomplished by force of will, but by the Spirit of God. Humility is not the absence of strength, it is the submission of strength. A horse that has never been trained is wild and powerful, but it cannot be trusted to carry a rider. Once that horse is broken, it does not lose its power, it simply brings its power under control, guided by the one who rides it. In the same way, a woman's strength is not destroyed by God's breaking, it is redirected. She becomes trustworthy in His hands, a vessel that can carry His glory without claiming it for herself. There is a deep beauty in this transformation. Before humility, strength can make a woman appear untouchable, as though she does not need help or guidance. After humility, her strength takes on a different fragrance. It is tender, approachable, filled with grace. She still carries the ability, but now her ability bows before the presence. She no longer seeks to prove herself. Instead, she seeks to please the one who called her. In that posture, her influence multiplies because people are not just drawn to her skill, but to the anointing of God resting upon her. Think of the story of Moses' mother, Jochebed. She was a strong woman, determined to save her child from Pharaoh's decree. Her strength could have led her to hold on tightly, refusing to let go of the baby she had hidden for months. But her breaking came when she realized she could no longer protect him on her own. She placed Moses in a basket and released him into the river. That act of surrender looked like weakness, but it was in fact the greatest strength of all. Her humility opened the door for God to protect her son, raise him in Pharaoh's house, and eventually use him to deliver Israel. Jochebed's breaking humbled her strength, but in that surrender, God's plan unfolded. This is what happens when God humbles a chosen woman. She does not lose her brilliance, her passion, or her courage. Instead, those qualities become clothed in humility, anchored in faith, and guided by the Spirit. She becomes more powerful than she ever imagined, not because she relies on herself, but because she has learned the secret of bowing her strength so that God's strength can rise. Humility becomes her hidden crown, and in that place, she is unstoppable. When God chooses a woman, one of the most profound things He does is bring her hidden wounds to the surface so they can be healed. These are not always the obvious struggles that others can see. They are often the private hurts buried beneath years of silence, the rejection she never spoke of, the betrayal she still carries, the shame she has hidden, the disappointments she has learned to smile through. Many times she has adapted to these wounds, building her life around them, convincing herself she is fine. Yet God knows that unless these places are touched by His hand, they will sabotage the very destiny He intends for her. That is why His breaking is never for destruction, it is for exposure and healing. The breaking feels painful because it unearths what she thought was buried forever. It brings to the surface emotions she thought she had mastered. But it is not cruelty, it is divine surgery. God cannot pour new oil into a vessel still leaking from unhealed cracks. He loves her too much to let her carry unresolved pain into her calling. By breaking her open, He creates space for His Spirit to heal, restore, and make her whole. This process is not meant to shame her. It is not God pointing a finger at her past. It is God removing the poison that has lingered in her soul, the lies she has believed about herself, the bitterness she has carried, or the fear that has silently dictated her choices. Every hidden wound, when exposed to His light, loses its power. What once was a source of weakness becomes a testimony of His grace. And here is the mystery: when those wounds are healed, they become sources of authority. A woman who has been through pain and healed by God carries a voice that cannot be faked. When she speaks to others who are hurting, her words carry weight because they are not theory, they are born out of survival. Her scars do not disqualify her, they qualify her to bring healing to others. She knows the language of pain, but she also knows the language of freedom, and that combination makes her dangerous to the enemy. Out of her scars flows compassion, authority, and authenticity that no classroom or book could ever give her. Consider the example of Hannah in Scripture. She was a woman deeply wounded by barrenness and the ridicule of her rival. year after year. She carried the silent ache of unanswered prayers. Outwardly, she continued to fulfill her role, but inwardly she was broken. It was in the moment of her breaking, weeping bitterly before the Lord, that God brought her wound to the surface. She poured out her soul in the temple, and instead of hiding her pain, she allowed God to touch it. That place of brokenness became the doorway to her healing. Not only did God give her a son, Samuel, but Hannah's story became one of the most powerful testimonies in Israel. Her womb that was once barren produced a prophet who would anoint kings. Her wound, once a source of shame, became the well through which God released his purpose for a nation. This is the power of God's breaking. It exposes not to destroy, but to free. It reveals pain not to embarrass, but to heal. And once a woman has been healed in her hidden places, she becomes unstoppable. She no longer speaks from insecurity, but from identity. She no longer leads from hurt, but from wholeness. And when she looks back, she realizes that what once broke her now builds others. What once was her prison has become her platform. When God chooses a woman, one of the most significant reasons he allows her to be broken is to enlarge her capacity to carry his glory. Without breaking, she remains a vessel that cannot hold what he longs to pour. She might carry a measure of his presence, but she will not have the depth to sustain it. An unbroken vessel leaks. It cannot retain the weight of what is placed inside it because the cracks of pride, self-sufficiency, and limited vision cause what is precious to slip away. That is why God, in his wisdom, allows seasons that bend her, stretch her, and sometimes even crush her, because in the process, he is making her into a container that can hold far more than she ever imagined. Brokenness does something no amount of talent, intelligence, or natural strength can do. It softens the heart. It removes the hardness that often builds up through disappointment or ambition. A tender heart is essential because God's glory cannot rest where there is arrogance or resistance. In her brokenness, she learns compassion. She begins to feel not only her own pain, but the pain of others. She becomes flexible where once she was rigid, willing to bend where before she insisted on her own way. Her soul becomes spacious like a widened container, able to hold deeper revelation, greater anointing, and more people than she thought she could ever embrace. This is why some of the most powerful women in history, both in the Bible and beyond, were not those who had everything together, but those who had walked through breaking. Their capacity for glory was not forged in comfort, but in hardship. The tears they shed watered the ground for future harvests. The nights they wrestled with God became the foundation for the authority they carried in the daylight. The breaking is preparation for revival. Revival is not just a public move of God. It is first a private work of the Spirit within an individual. If God poured out his presence without first creating capacity, it would overwhelm her. But when he has stretched her through breaking, she is able to hold more, sustain more, and release more. What once seemed impossible for her to carry becomes natural because her inner life has been enlarged. Consider the example of Mary of Bethany. She carried an alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume, something valuable and beautiful in itself. But as long as it remained unbroken, its fragrance could not fill the room. The act of breaking the jar seemed wasteful to some, but in truth, it was the only way for the perfume's true worth to be revealed. In the same way, when God breaks a woman, what he has placed inside her is released. Her worship becomes richer, her faith becomes deeper, and her influence becomes wider. That which was once sealed and hidden now flows freely, blessing everyone around her. When a woman emerges from brokenness, she does not rise shallow or fragile. She rises as a well that never runs dry. She has a depth of wisdom, compassion, and resilience that only comes through the crushing. Her capacity for glory is far beyond what it once was because God has widened her soul to carry more of him. She becomes the kind of woman through whom rivers of living water flow, refreshing others, sustaining communities, and leaving a legacy that outlives her. That is the paradox of God's choice. The breaking that feels like loss is in fact enlargement. He does not break to diminish, he breaks to increase. And when he finally pours out his glory, the broken woman is not only ready to hold it, she is ready to release it to the world. When God chooses a woman, the breaking she goes through is never only about her life. It feels personal, it feels intimate, it feels like the crushing weight is pressing solely on her shoulders. but the truth is much greater. The breaking is preparation for influence beyond herself. A chosen woman is never chosen just for her own sake. She is chosen for her family, for her community, for her nation, and often for generations that will come after her. That is why her breaking feels so intense. God is not preparing her for a small assignment. He is preparing her to carry something that will outlive her. When a woman is broken, her view of herself is shattered, and that can be painful. She learns quickly that the platform is not the goal, and that applause cannot sustain her. Without breaking, she might easily confuse her calling with performance or her worth with recognition. But in the breaking, God strips away the desire to be seen and replaces it with the hunger to remain in His presence. She begins to value private encounters with Him above public validation from people. What God does in her privately, her secret prayers, her midnight tears, her moments of surrender, is the real preparation for what He will later do through her publicly. And when she stands before others, she carries an authenticity that comes from her secret history with God. Her influence is refined in the shadows before it is revealed in the light. God makes sure that her heart has been tested before her name is ever lifted. This prevents her from worshiping the platform or mistaking influence as ownership. Instead, she learns that every opportunity is stewardship. The very people she will one day serve will not be won by her strength or charm, but by the depth of God in her. That depth was dug during the breaking. This is why her life cannot remain self-centered. A chosen woman's pain is rarely wasted. What she overcomes in private becomes the victory she imparts in public. If she has endured rejection, she will later be a voice of acceptance to others. If she has endured loss, she will later carry the oil of comfort. If she has been broken in pride, she will later serve with humility that inspires others. Her influence is not for her ego, it is for others' freedom. A beautiful example of this is the story of Esther. She was an ordinary young woman, hidden and unknown, but chosen by God to save her people. Before she ever entered the palace, she went through a season of preparation that humbled her and broke her from her old identity. She could not simply walk in as she was. She had to be refined, processed, and trained. Her year of preparation was not glamorous. It was breaking. She learned submission, patience, and obedience. By the time she stood before the king, she was no longer just Esther, the orphan girl. She was Esther, the queen, carrying an authority bigger than herself. And when the moment came for her to risk her life for her people, she understood that her position was not about her comfort. For such a time as this meant her influence was for the salvation of a nation. In the same way, when God chooses a woman today, He takes her through breaking because her life is not her own. She is being positioned for legacy. Her tears will water the ground for others' joy. Her struggles will open doors for others' freedom. Her breaking ensures that when influence comes, she will use it not for herself, but for the generations connected to her. That is why she cannot despise the breaking. It is not just shaping her story, it is shaping the story of many others who will rise because she first endured. So to every woman who feels crushed, abandoned, overlooked, hear this truth. You are not being destroyed, you are being prepared. The breaking you feel is not the end of your story, it is the beginning of your destiny. God breaks who He trusts. He wounds only to heal deeper. He empties only to fill greater. And when a woman rises after being broken by God, she does not rise ordinary. She rises unshakable. She rises untouchable. She rises unstoppable. When God chooses a woman, He breaks her first, but only because He intends to crown her next.